Here's how to record to a tape machine and then simultaneously record those tracks into the DAW in real time. Step 1, you're going to need a patch bay that has half normaling capability. If you don't have that, you can also use an analog mixer if it has direct outs. Let's start with the patch bay approach. The preamp I'm using is a Neve 1073 OPX, and I've got all 8 channels patched into outputs 1 through 8 on the patch bay. And those are half normaled to inputs 1 through 8 on my converters, which are right here. Now, half normaling means that you're basically splitting the signal in two. And so the snake is also receiving the outputs from the preamp, and the snake is going to the inputs on my tape machine. And the tape machine I'm using for this video is an Otari MX5050 Mark III 8-track. If you don't have a patch bay, you can also use an analog mixer with direct outputs. You would patch your preamp into however many channels you need on your mixer, and then come out of the direct outs going into your tape machine. There are 2 important reasons why we're splitting the signal like this. One is that we need to be able to monitor what you're recording through something other than the tape machine. And the reason is that the audio coming out of your tape machine while you're recording is going to have a slight delay, and I'll explain why later. I'm going to be monitoring with the audio coming into my converters using Apollo's console. And if you're using an analog mixer instead of half normaling off of a patch bay, you're going to want to use the mixer for monitoring. And then you're also going to want to take a stereo left and right out of your DAW and go into the analog mixer so that you'll be able to hear your click track, any instruments that you're overdubbing on top of, etc. The second reason is that because the audio coming in from your tape machine is going to be recorded at a slight delay, we need a digital copy with no delay to be able to sync your audio up to later on. Step 2, assuming your tape machine is properly calibrated and the VU meters are all calibrated, you're going to want to use these to gain stage your preamps. In my case, I'm using a Neve 1073 OPX, which has remote recall capability, so I can simply go to my drum preset, which I've used a lot for recording in the DAW, and I load up these presets, and then from there, I'm going to gain stage how this is hitting my tape machine. Step 3, you're going to want to patch the outputs coming from your tape machine to the inputs on your converters or interface. In my case, I've got a 16-channel converter, and so I'm able to use the first 8 channels to monitor directly from my preamp and also record digitally from the preamp. And then we're half normaling that to the tape machine, and then when it's coming back from the tape machine, we're now going into 9 through 16 on my converters. Step 4, we're going to create tracks for all of our tape machine outputs. In my case, that's channels 9 through 16. But then we're also going to want to create a track for your overheads to be recorded in digitally, as in from the preamp to your converter. And so in my case, this is channels 5 through 6. If you're using an analog mixer, you would take a mix out of the mixer and go into 2 open channels on your converter and record those in. Step 5, now we're going to get your tape machine ready to record. So we want to put this machine into repro mode. And what this means is that the audio coming out of your machine is the audio that's going to be coming off of the playback head. Now this is different from when you're recording and overdubbing like normal on this machine, where you might be in select repro mode. And in this case, you're going to be hearing the audio coming off of the record head so that it's in sync with all the other tracks that you may have already recorded. But for this, we want the audio to record and then immediately be captured by the playback head into your DAW. So you're going to be recording audio onto the tape with this head, and then immediately playing it back and sending it out of the machine with this head. And you'll notice that there's some space between them. That's what's going to cause the delay that we're going to compensate for later. Next, we're going to arm all your tracks for recording, and then simultaneously hit record on your machine and your DAW. In my case, I'm going into the live room to record, and so I'm using a remote controller for my tape machine, and then a laptop using screen sharing to control Logic. All right, so if we play back all the tracks that we recorded, our analog as well as digital tracks, you're going to hear something like this. There's that delay we were talking about. And so what we're going to want to do is select our analog tracks here. And then I recorded in a mult of the overhead digitally, and it'll be easiest on drums to compare with the overheads. So the digital one is the correct positioning, so I'm going to align all the analog tracks to that by lining up those transients. And so we can see here, those pretty much line up. And now if we play it back and mute the digital and engage the metronome, they should be in sync. Now that our tracks are in sync, let's take a listen to a rough mix. So all I have going on here is just a noise gate on each channel to cut down on a little bit of the tape noise. I've got a gain plug-in to try to even out some of the tape return volumes because my machine isn't 100% perfectly calibrated, and so some of the repro volumes are a little bit all over the place. And then just some basic EQ, standard EQ for close mics and overheads pretty much, and then a little lexicon reverb. Let's take a listen. And that's it. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments. Thanks for watching.